Well, welcome to the 700 Club. Today is what we call Maundy Thursday, and as part of our Holy Week tradition, we'll be sharing communion with you on this program. So we invite you at this moment, get some bread, wine, juice, whatever, and get ready to join us later on. But first in the news, empty streets, no pilgrims flocking to holy sites. For the first time ever, Israel is in lockdown for Holy Week. And as Chris Mitchell reports from Jerusalem, it hasn't stopped the city's Christians from celebrating the resurrection of Jesus Christ.
This is what Good Friday usually looks like on the Via Dolorosa, Latin for the Way of Suffering, where Christian pilgrims from all over the world come to retrace the steps of Jesus on his way to his crucifixion on the cross. This year on Good Friday, the Via Dolorosa here in the heart of Jerusalem will be empty, since all outdoor processions have been canceled by the government because of COVID-19.
Usually in such seasons, the city is overloaded with people. Now the roads are empty. We won't have practically any outdoor activity. All prayers will be held with very, very minimal participation.
The same holds true here in the Garden Tomb, just outside the walls of Jerusalem's Old City, where many people believe Jesus was laid in this empty tomb and then rose from the dead. The Garden Tomb Association has held Easter sunrise services for years, many of them broadcast by CBN.
Normally there are thousands here on Easter morning, but this year we could only allow 4 people on camera at a time. Well, the Easter service we have planned now is going to be a mix of readings from some of the community who are still here, of prayers, of praying for those victims and those who are suffering with the virus.
Abu Nasser says, despite the circumstances, there's cause for hope.
St. Paul says everything is working for the sake of those who love God. I believe that God and the divine wisdom might require us to reflect and to pray more. And I do believe that this is an opportunity for the families, especially nucleus families, to pray more, to reflect more.
It will look very different to previous years, obviously because there are no people allowed to attend it. But we still believe that is still an act of worship to God, because the ministry of the Garden Tomb is about a place of worship and witness and prayer. And that will continue even through this virus.
Regardless of the government restrictions because of the coronavirus, Abu Nasser and Holland say the message of Easter remains the same.
That we believe in resurrected Lord, and death, even despite all difficulties, Easter reflects that life would prevail.
The message of the gospel stays the same, and that message that the Garden Tombs proclaimed for 126 years, that Jesus died, that Jesus was buried, and that Jesus rose again for everyone who's listening to this message today and the whole world.
Chris Mitchell, CBN News, the Garden Tomb and Via Dolorosa, Jerusalem.
Well, thanks, Chris. Well, this program note, this Sunday, April 12th, join us for a special Easter service from the Garden Tomb in Israel. Visit cbn.com for /Easter for more information about how to watch the Garden Tomb service. It airs Sunday at 6 a.m. Eastern Daylight Time with repeat showing throughout the day. You can also watch a Garden Tomb Easter service on the CBN News Channel. Well, a little later, we're going to be talking to our good friend Franklin Graham about his ministry's work in New York and his prayer with President Trump yesterday. But first in the news, another shocking jobs report from the government today, as jobless claims rose by 6.6 million. That's as much as last week's record numbers. Ephraim Graham has more.
Pat, there are growing concerns the economy is already in a deep recession. The good news is the projected death toll is flattening, and we might emerge from this sooner than originally thought. So what is the administration doing now to keep the economy afloat? Our Gary Lane is on the story.
Business shutdowns are causing a record number of Americans to file unemployment claims. Overall, experts say 50 million American jobs are vulnerable to coronavirus layoffs.
There's no doubt in my mind that we've entered into a recession, an economic contraction, and that we will probably touch back on the highs of unemployment of 10% that we saw during the great financial crisis and recession.
The heavy volume of people filing unemployment claims are overwhelming online government servers. This laid-off nurse practitioner in New York found her online experience frustrating.
It took probably 2 hours for me to actually be able to fill and submit the claim because the website's very slow. It kept on freezing, and crashing.
One solution, people in Hialeah, Florida are submitting claims at this pop-up government drive-through. Meanwhile, in New York, another record coronavirus death toll announced Wednesday with 779 deaths in one day. But there's good news. The infection rate is slowing as some hospitals release more patients than they are admitting. As the curve starts flattening in New York, other potential hotspots are popping up. Washington, D.C., Philadelphia, and Baltimore. Particularly hard hit are African Americans, the disease taking a larger toll in the black community because the underlying medical conditions that make the disease so deadly are more prevalent. An Associated Press analysis shows 42% of victims whose demographic data were shared were black, while blacks make up roughly 21% of the population in those areas.
Health disparities in the minority community, but particularly the African American community, puts them at risk, apart from coronavirus issues, puts them at risk for diseases much more so than the general population.
In the meantime, a new model predicts fewer U.S. deaths from the virus by August. Once expected to number as many as 240,000, the death toll number is now down significantly, predicted to reach 60,000.
You redo your models depending upon your data, and our data is telling us that mitigation is working.
So when will America start getting back to a pre-COVID-19 normal? Some experts say not until a vaccine is readily available. On this week's episode of the CBN News Channel program, The Global Lane, former FDA Associate Commissioner Peter Pitts says a vaccine may come sooner than expected.
My information tells me we'll see a vaccine between 10 and 12 months, and that's because a variety of companies all around the world, but largely in the U.S., are devoting tremendous resources to getting the job done quickly.
In one small sign of a return to normalcy, the administration has approved new guidelines, allowing essential workers exposed to the virus to go back to work if they aren't showing any symptoms. On Wednesday, President Trump held a conference call with 10,000 faith leaders. He shared some words of encouragement.
Well, we may be physically apart. We can use this time to pray, to reflect, and to focus on our personal relationship with God.
In the meantime, coronavirus relief checks will begin hitting American bank accounts just after Easter. This as Congress is negotiating additional funding to provide more paycheck protection loans to small businesses. And the president is expected to announce a second task force aimed at getting the economy back on track. Gary Lane, CBN News.
Pat, back to you.
Well, as we have said repeatedly, the cure may be worse than the disease. And it's just imperative that we don't wait for some kind of a cure that may not be coming urgently. We've got to get people back to work, and we've got to lift this, all these bans, at least part of them, as quickly as possible. It's absolutely key. And there's an encouraging sign, actually, when you go back to China, where apparently some of this stuff came from, that in the city of Wuhan, things are looking much better. So here's Ephraim.
Pat, China has lifted its travel lockdown on Wuhan, the city where the coronavirus began and then spread worldwide. After 76 days, residents are again allowed to journey outside the area without special permission. They were first allowed back outside their homes about 2 weeks ago. We spoke then with American Rebecca Franks, who lives in Wuhan. She told us how faith and refusing to fear got her and her family through the ordeal.
There is absolutely nothing special about us other than the fact that God's with us and he is available for anybody there, and just have hope because you can get through this. The only thing to fear is fear itself. And I feel that's true because in fear, we just make irrational decisions, and fear and panic, they're just not beneficial. So what is the point?
Rebecca also said there were hidden blessings in the lockdown, such as spending more time with her family. We cannot give in to fear. Pat?
Well, I just want to tell you, fear is terribly corrosive to your health. So being afraid, being under stress, and losing sleep will make you more vulnerable. So let's not have it happen. Now, there's something interesting happening here in Virginia's Hampton Roads area, where a dozen churches are getting together. Let's see if Efren can give us that story.
Pat, much closer to home, as you said, here in Virginia's Hampton Roads area, dozens of churches are putting a unique twist on a traditional Easter message. George Thomas brings us a look at their high-flying approach.
Just follow the E.
Some directed traffic.
Back up, back up, back up, back up. And you're good.
Others lined up each car just right as members of 12 Virginia churches rolled up with their masks on and maintaining strict social distancing guidelines to send the world an Easter message.
In the middle of this pandemic, there's hope, that there's strength, and that we will make it through this. Because he has risen, so will we.
On a stretch of road in Chesapeake, dozens of cars lined up to spell the words, "He is risen."
I think with as much desperation and anxiety going on in the world at this time, people are looking for hope, and it's a great opportunity for us to get out there and love our neighbors and share the love of Jesus with them.
As the emotional and physical toll of the COVID-19 outbreak rises, folks here want their fellow Americans not to lose heart.
God is with us. That same spirit that raised Jesus from the dead is with us in this really terrible time.
Pastor Bob Fox organized the event to encourage congregations to reach a hurting world during times of uncertainty.
This is an opportunity for us to go forward, not just to be passive and just try to wait it out, but to really listen to the Lord. The Lord wants to use this time to take the church to new levels of expressing the gospel.
And it's happening. Research shows a huge spike in online searches relating to faith, God, and the Bible since the viral outbreak started.
We've seen big upticks in searches around fear and anxiety. We've also seen record levels of people sharing scripture.
Fox says while this event is a symbolic gesture of unity,
and also just to get out, take the gospel outside the walls. Since we can't get in the walls, we have to take it outside the walls. As the coronavirus pandemic continues to bear down across the globe, the drivers of these 49 cars are hoping that the words "He is risen" will bring hope in the midst of this historic season of fear, anxiety, and widespread isolation. George Thomas, CBN News, Chesapeake, Virginia.
He is risen indeed. Pat?
Well, that's tremendous.